Also focus there.
Focus, I don't know how to do it.
It's good now.
It's good?
It's
Yeah.
perfect now.
I mean focus?
Yes.
Yes.
No, it was not.
No, it was not.
But you can press on him to focus on him.
Yeah.
And then you can...
Uh, Everyone,
It's a joke, Hjalda. Björn, I was joking.
are you ready?
About
Yes.
pressing. About the things in the board.
Are we
Samsung
all ready
users?
now?
Okay, let's give him the word.
Yes.
Yes. What is the entire human endeavor? Like I'm going to give you a brief overview of understanding the entirety of the universe, the entirety of human civilization, and what we do here. So that's been my goal. I've been asking myself these questions for many years, and I've been coming up with a small fragment of this because before that, me, Carl McFall and Bertola formed the Fututure Navigation, and we took Carl McFall's framework for place making, place innovation, and we did some talks about that in all over Sweden and Norway, and nobody understood anything what we talked about because it was too complex. So I've spent the last 4 or 5 years coming up with an explanation for what it is we're trying to say. So I've put together, and I've done it together here with Per Student, and I have filmed it before, but it has evolved a lot since then because I've gotten feedback how to explain it better, and also learned a lot about in the process about what society is. So that's what I'm in exploring. So the question is, how do we navigate the society? And the term navigate comes from we started, me and Carl McFall had both individually noticed that many people used in talks and stuff, and they asked the question, how do you navigate that? How do you navigate entrepreneurship? How do you navigate AI and stuff like that? So if there is an activity and a verb called navigate, there must also be a way to do it, a skill to navigate. So that's why we call it navigation. How do you navigate human society and learning, and how do you navigate our way into the future? Because it's a perfect metaphor together with the metaphor of Earth being a ship as well. So how do you navigate the whole of Earth into the future as a crew? What roles do you need? I'll go into later specific my philosophy around navigating. We'll come to that later, but we will start from the beginning here. So that's why it's called navigation, Future Navigators. So how do you navigate an event-driven learning society and understand the collective value creation with Michael Sillion, Captain Future? That's the title. So, of course, I am Captain Future, so I will jump some slides here that's from the previous that I put in the previous presentation and expand upon that. So I will skip the intro here. But if you have any questions, you have now 30 seconds to ask them. But it's the same intro.
Have you watched Avatar?
Yeah.
Okay, what's the picture of Avatar?
That was Avatar 2, but I like the first one because that's a lot of interesting narratives, and I will come to. It's a silly movie, but there are some interesting narratives in it that I have been exploring. So I can just maybe jump directly to where the presentation starts. Here we go. So this is our home. This is not a real picture of Earth. This is a made-up picture. But on one of the first astronaut missions, I have it picture later here. They went to the moon without landing. They just circled the moon before they actually went landing for the first lunar landing. And somehow someone got an idea to turn the camera around to Earth and take a picture on Earth with the moon as the foreground, and that's a famous picture. I have it later in my presentation. So that's the first time we got to see our whole planet, to understand what it is. Because nobody, before we went to the space, nobody knew what the Earth looked like from space.
The blue marble.
The pale blue dot, yeah. So I talked about roles and identities, and that's a very important part of this, because if we want to take care of something, we have to have a type of caretaker role. And I listed some of the things I've been playing with, and I would love for you to add to the list to come up with your own. But we can become the guardians, the stewards, the caretakers, the custodians, the captains, the midwives, the ambassadors, the sense makers, the curators, the wisdom bearers, the playmakers, the sentinels, the designers, the explorers, the weavers, the navigators, and the crew members of Spaceship Earth. So some of the things I've been playing with, and that's good. We have to play with things like this to actually understand what it is to take care of a planet, because no person can do it alone. It's a big planet, but we can do it together as a crew.
I really like the name Playmakers.
Yeah. So then when I asked you before to come up with a playful identity, this is some of the things you can choose or work on, or you come up with your own. The essence is, how is that part of the crew? What's your role in the crew? There is like literally thousands or different parts you can play in a crew. That can be a work title or a playful title or a party title if you go to a party. But the important part is, how is that part of a crew? Because it's not in isolation. How do you play with others in that crew? That's your role. That's what I been playing a lot with myself, and I ask other people to play with as well. So here the picture is from Moon to Earth. So crew. The crew is of course a substantive, but it's also a verb in English. So that means to crew something. It means to actually play the crew.
When was it taken?
60. When was the moon landing? The year before the moon landing. 69. The moon
16?
landing. Yeah. You can. I don't. Sorry, I should have this in my memory, but 68 or something like that.
72.
You can.
72, right?
The
Apollo 16 or
The first. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
Apollo
It's
16
yeah.
was
You
the
can.
first.
We can Google that later, but the important part is, to crew is not just a substantive. It's also a verb. There's no Swedish. There's no Swedish verb for it, so besättning is the Swedish word. I don't know if you're what's a crew in your language? What's your native language? Some of you.
Mine's Nepali.
So what's crew in?
I have to think.
That's
Yeah.
what I was gonna say.
In
In Bangla.
What would be Bangla? Probably similar, right?
Mm.
Yeah, we were so much influenced by the British. You know, like not directly as in India, but you know, like informally. So we, like whenever we talk Nepali, we mix a lot of English words.
Of course.
So we have slowly forgotten the original Nepali words because we have been habituated using English words most often. So crew is like
I think so. Shodosho. Do you have
like
a member?
passenger or something like that.
Yeah, passenger is the opposite of crew then.
Yeah.
Right? So chalak. So chalak is like a driver. So if you could say that. Chalak flight.
In
And it-
Icelandic, it's auhöfn, which means like usually connected to ships or airplanes.
And in Somali,
Salak
it's
dal.
kah.
Salak dal.
It's
Kah.
Dal is like a group.
Yeah.
Chalak
And then
dal.
that's a crew.
Chalak is.
The driver. Yeah.
So it's chalak dal.
yeah.
Crew is chalak dal. So chalak is like a driver, and then dal is like a group. So crew is.
Det var så väl du kunde vara tyst.
Yes. So navigate. We also need maps. This is an old map called Carta Marina. And on this map is one of the few maps there actually are sea creatures on it. And from that map, there's a saying, "Here be dragons, hic sunt dragones." It's from the old Roman saying, "Here be lions." That is from the unknown. Of course, I didn't know about the world, but they know that in the wilderness there's dangerous creatures. And then they turned that around in 1,000 years later. So the hic sunt dracones, here be dragons. I mean, it's exploring the unknown, and that's what we're going to do, because we think we know how the world works, and we have an old model and mindsets of how modern Western industrial civilization and society works, but it's not the maps we need to use now. So I'm going to give you some new maps here and explore the unknown. That's why I like this mindset. And this is Terry Pratchett has dragons in several of his books that uses this term as well. And if you have, there's a sci-fi series called The Expanse where there's an entire episode. It's called Here Be Dragons as well. Have you seen The Expanse, anyone? I've seen it. I've been watching it the 8th time now, so it's really good. But there's a lot of narratives about today's society in that series, even if it takes place in the future when we colonize the solar systems. So what is a society? Society is a naturally occurring phenomenon. Before we were hunter-gatherer tribes and we lived in small tribes, and most of the tribes, they produced the food, the tools, the clothes they needed for daily living. But society is an emergent property of social humans, because we, through specialization, we came up that we can coordinate and do things in one tribe, and then we can trade with another tribe. So we become really good at making one type of thing, and another tribe becomes good at making another type of thing. And then we have to trade with each other, and we're all better off for it, because if you're good at something, you make it way better than someone who has not trained in it. And that's what we have as society today. It's the specialization of your chosen career, to specialize in something instead of being moderate of doing everything. So society is an emergent property of social humans specializing in things. And that's what we call value creation. I had a really interesting talk just last night and this morning with Zach Stein, who wrote a book of value creation. He said value creation, I will talk about it very soon because I integrated it this morning. Value creation value has been around since the universe began. So for anything to happen in the universe, there has to be value. I will explain that later. So that's my new take. So this is the new part of the presentation. But the interesting question then, how do you coordinate specialization? How do you know that there's enough people specialize in making the things we need? Is there someone coordinating? Is it a top-down 5-year plan, or is it a totally free market where market forces decides everything? I would say it's neither. And the competing narratives from capitalism to communism around this, that people still are stuck in today, none of them works because it's neither. So that's what I'm going to go into here. So how do we enable everyone to create the things we need and want? So what is value creation? This is my definition, but it coincided with a lot of what Zach Stein said to me when I heard this morning. But this is the things we need and the things we want for any. But it's going to go deeper than that. So it's value created. It's value, and to create value, you usually take existing value. It can be anything from resources, energy, time, competence, and things like that. And we transform it, we chain it, we upgrade it, we mix it, we transport it, we market it, and facilitate it. And we also consume it. And in the process, we usually also destroy value. We take away things, like literally destroy it, like blow it up or poison it, but also like making it go away because we use it up. If we make steel of iron ore, the ore is gone and the steel is there instead. So it's a scaling process of taking away value to create a new value. So society is a way for collective value creation, and you can see if you look around in the room here. Can you see anything? It's a very simple question, but can you see anything that you've made yourself? The whole process in this room. So,
can you repeat the question once again?
Can you see anything on this table or in this room that one person has made from start to finish? No. The paper, the iPhones, the computers, the bottles, the glasses.
I was about to say pair of shoes, but
the other ones. Yeah. So there's an interesting book. I don't remember the name, but the guy tried to make a toaster from scratch, like digging up the ore, melting the ore, everything from scratch, and it was a disaster. It was too many skills. He didn't get the working toaster, but he did it as an experiment and wrote a book about it. So nobody in our society can make anything by our own anymore. We used to be hunter-gatherers when a small group of hunters and gatherers could supply themselves with the basic needs to survive on their own for many years. And we had bigger brains back then because we had to have so much knowledge in our brain because we had to know everything. Now we know less, but we are also specialized, and that's both a fantastic thing because why we couldn't have iPhones without specialization. There's so many thousands of different competences and people and knowledge and science involved in making and value chains and supply chains, 50 countries and everything to make one thing. But it's also a dilemma because we can become locked in, and there's people who are generalists, and we call them expert generalists, and we also call them polymaths, people who are know a lot of things, like I'm trying to be. I've been training myself to become what we call a polymath. And a friend of mine, Angela, is one of the leading researchers in the world. She has a group on Facebook, the Polymath Place, for people who want to explore what it is to be an expert general or a polymath. Because in today's society, we don't employ generalists, we employ specialists and experts. But they just have one part of the puzzle, and they can't often see the whole picture or the whole puzzle done. And that's a problem, even in leadership. Even leaders are in their bubble and only see the world through their glasses.
Michael,
Yeah?
can you elaborate on the part where you said we don't employ generalists, we employ specialists?
Yeah, if you search for a job, you usually, there's a work title and a special skill set or knowledge or work description coupled with it. Of course, modern day entrepreneurs have many more of these skills. So like if you think of the startup entrepreneur that have to juggle everything and do everything on their own, they become what we call a generalist. And then we go deeper in that mindset to understand much more, just not entrepreneurship, but the whole society. Then we start calling these people polymaths. But you don't see ads for poly. We want to hire a polymath who's not good at anything but knows little about everything. Jack of all trades and different names of it, the wild card and things like that.
Still needed in that sense.
Yeah, they're needed much more now than ever because society has become so complex to even grasp a little bit of what society is. We need people who can do at least do that, and we need to hire them in large organizations, in municipalities, cities, institutes and stuff like that, but almost nowhere there's a dedicated generalist hired. So, and we use money, we measure everything in money today, so we become obsessed of naming what something costs in money, because I would say almost nothing costs money. You can both buy value and we can destroy value using money. And there's a lot of, I can do like an hour talk just about money because I'm really interested in the narrative around money and listen to a lot of it. So things like that.
But you can say that we are together, this group, we are a polymath.
We are.
That's why we try to do this, because we have all these cultures, religions, educations, histories.
Yeah. So society, it's a complex thing, and we call it this a hyper object, and we together, we are all living agents. I will come into this soon, but together we are what we call a hyper agent. A society is a hyper. We can act and do things together that no one of us can do alone, and that's what we call that is called a hyper agent. And how do you coordinate the hyper agent? Is it a company? Is it an institution? Is it a community? Is it a civil? What is a hyper agent? Is it a country? Is it a city? What is it? We don't know because we don't talk about it. We have to explore this just to get to know what it is, and then when we know what it is, we can start exploring it further. So, yeah. Costs, money and narrative. Money is mostly 90% created when you lend into existence today by a bank or a credit giver. So most of the money we use and see today are made up when you take a loan. when you take a loan for you know about this money and money creation. So when you're gonna buy a house or a flat, you go to the bank and borrow some money. The bank doesn't have the money. They just type a number in a computer and the money poof comes out of nothing. They double. It's double bookkeeping. They create an asset that they lend to you, and they keep a skuld liability on the other, double bookkeeping. So by typing in a number in two accounts, the money comes into existence.
So
That's how you create money today.
basically the bank, they don't have money.
No,
No,
not today.
Okay.
That's why they're so afraid of. That's why they bailed out all the banks, because if there were a bank run, they don't even have your money. If you have, so there's no money in the bank, no physical money or even digital money.
So basically they have a lot of money because they create the money.
Yeah.
They just put numbers.
Yeah.
Back in the days, all money in the world were connected to how much gold that state.
Gold or silver coins or
Yeah.
copper
So
coins
there was always
or
a balance
pearls.
Yeah.
between real value
Mm.
and money, because money was just a paper to show how much value you had in your bank, vault in real value.
So you
But
put the
nowadays-
gold in the vault and
What
they
is the
gave you a
conclusion,
paper says I own that gold.
Bank.
So instead of going to the
So-
bank,
Bankruptcy.
there's some very good
How many
YouTube
banks
videos on
have-
this. So instead of going to the bank, get your gold and give it to someone, you just gave them the
If they
note.
can
Now
put
you
numbers.
can claim my gold. So that's what the banknote was, and that turned
Yeah.
into
Mm-hmm.
paper
That's
bills
interesting.
in in Venice
And nowadays, I
format.
think it is 3 times as much fake money on the planet than there is value,
Yeah.
because many of the states around the world are just printing papers with numbers on it.
Yeah.
So
And
there
especially
is
the-
no real value.
That's so
Yeah.
confusing.
It is.
Just
I won't go too much into money because
Yeah,
we only
but
have an
it's-
hour.
it's
There's just one part that I want you to answer.
Yeah.
How
You
about
have to
national
explain more
debt?
later.
That's too complex for me. But
That's too complex.
in essence, this is not real money either. As a nation state can create as much money as it wants,
Alright.
and it usually creates inflation. But
Inflation,
it turns out it doesn't anymore because the US has so much debt, and they create like trillions of dollars of debt. I don't know the exact number,
Yeah,
but
but then they don't have to pay
yeah,
it
but
because they can print their own money.
yeah, but that
No.
doesn't cause inflation anymore because they have no inflation in the US. So it's super complex. But in essence, money isn't real.
Alright, we can proceed.
And
And I will come back to that very soon what this will. But the funny thing is you listen to the news and people say it's going to cost that much money, and I will say a cost of a resource is when it is used up, consumed, or destroyed. And we don't consume or destroy money; we give it to someone else. So for society's sakes, nothing costs money because the money just circles around, and that's what you want for a working market economy. You want money to circulate. So it doesn't for society. It doesn't for the person. It costs money. But for society, when a city says it's going to cost this much money to build a school, it doesn't cost money because they give money to someone else, and they in turn pay salaries and they buy food for it and so on. So the money just circulates. It doesn't cost money. It costs the resources you buy and consume. That's the real cost for a society. And if we can get that mindset right, we can solve a lot of problems. So that's what I'm going to talk to.
I have a question. Can you later send the presentation to me?
Yeah, sure.
If you
I'll
have-
film in it. And I can send you the PDFs and everything. Yeah.
I'm talking about the money part presentation.
Yeah, the
videos.
YouTube videos
Yeah.
on money. I have them as well. So
Thank
you hook me up on LinkedIn or Facebook, and I will send you and ask for all the links you want, and I'll give you.
Can
to
you
you.
just mention that 2010, the US debt, country debt was 14,000 billion dollars.
14 trillion.
Yeah.
But like nobody is gonna ask for money. to
No,
sell.
because there's
No,
no one asking. The money is made up.
Because and they
No.
have the printing power.
Yeah.
Like for example, if any African countries or any like not so developed South Asian countries, like they owe so much, they have to actually pay. So they sometimes pay with resources or actual money.
Mhm.
But then US, it does not matter how much it owes,
Mm.
it has the power to print money. So it doesn't
Yeah.
really matter to them.
And if they had power,
So
like
they're basically looting
They're looting the world.
It's like
like
cheating.
Yeah,
That's cheating.
They're pretty much looting every small countries in the world with
That's-
resources like Congo.
There's a very good
And,
talk about the dollar, petrol dollar. But
Mhm.
Alex has the Oslo Freedom Forum. I'll send you that link.
Okay, thank you.
Mind-blowing talk about the petrodollar. But we created a model to navigate the society, and since all models, I made a little poem from. If you know the Lord of the Rings, there's a poem in the beginning about one ring, and this is so that you have to use silliness. You don't become obsessed with your own model, because many people today, when I travel the world, they have one model or one framework for things, and we can only do it by my model because I'm the one who has the right model. So that's why I made this. So don't have too much ego in your own model. 3 models to the change makers in the West. 7 for the meta leaders in the hubs of co-creation. 9 for lost men stuck in old narratives. 1 for the wisest guru on his podcast pedestal. In the land of enlightenment where the light shine. 1 model to rule them all. 1 model to find them. And 1 model to bring them all. And in the YouTube video bind them. In the land of enlightenment where the light emerge.
Amazing.
Yeah. Because now I'm going to give you the true model. The 1 model to rule them all. Yeah, so we're living in what we call a learning universe. From the beginning of time, there was only hydrogen, and then we got helium and heavier elements. And then the universe learned to make galaxies, suns, and the planets and everything. And it wasn't around from the beginning. We didn't have, there wasn't iron in the universe, so we couldn't make Earth planets with magnet fields and a rotating molten Earth core that generates a magnet field. So the universe had to learn that, and you did that through experimentation, supernovas. So eventually, supernovas created enough iron to create a planet like Earth, where we have a molten iron core that creates a magnetic field. And without that, they wouldn't reflect the solar radiation that would kill all life on Earth. So the universe had to learn that, and that's my thesis. I have seen very few people says that we live in a learning universe and a learning galaxy, but we live in what we call a learning society. And then came the next step of learning, and that's life. And we only know of planet Earth so far that has life. There probably are others, but we don't know. But that's the next step of learning. So we gave rise to matter that learned to do things that the universe couldn't even dream of. Small living creatures, bacteria and fungus, and then we multicellular life, and gave rise to nervous systems and brains. And then one day there was an ape who figured out how to externalize learning. They couldn't. Most of creatures throughout time have internalized learning by giving it to the next generation through RNA and DNA. But we figured out a way to store all our learning outside ourselves in stories, first in writing, and then in books. And today we have an explosion of learning. There's so much information. Like how much content does it post on YouTube every day? More than you can watch in a lifetime, in a single day, perhaps. And no one has read all the books, and certainly none has seen all the YouTube videos and all the Netflix series and everything. It's impossible to keep up. So why do we do with all this learning? And that's just like the content. We also have all the different skill sets. We talked about skills and expertise and specialists. Who knows? Can you name 1 million different types of specialists? How many specialists can you name? Work titles.
Like how many spares there are?
How many work titles and special type of work professions are there in the world? More than you're aware of. And how can we keep track on all that learning? So even if you're in a small field, how do you keep track with all the things that happen in your field? Like you say you're an expert in glass making. How do you keep track on everything that happens in the glass industry? I talked to an expert in glass making. He said during the 90s they were kept track on everything, but now it's even in a small field it's impossible to keep track of what's happening in a small field. So I made up a model to navigate what is the universe.
Michael,
Yeah.
you said, if you can go back to the one above,
Yeah.
and after learning society, do you believe there's another part, or is it just by learning that?
It's so complex that is, but maybe a learning universe that if we meet another civilization, then it will really start learning. But we don't know yet. We can speculate using science fiction stories, movies, and stuff like that. Speculate what happens if civilization meets with different learning, so we can start learning from each other.
Do you think we will in the future?
I don't know, but we can start learning from each other on planet Earth because we don't do that yet. So we can start that journey. Become good at learning from each other. We are good at it, but we can become way better. So for anything to happen in the universe, you need energy and you need matter. So energy for anything and anything to happen, anything to move in the universe, you need energy, of some kind. And energy uses matter to move matter around or move energy around. The sun is a perfect example. The sun uses is it fission or fusion?
Fusion.
Yeah. Fusion in the sun, yeah. They use fusion, hot fusion, not cold fusion, to make energy, and it takes a lot of time for the energy in the sun to actually reach the surface and radiate out. I don't think thousands of years or millions of years. I don't remember. Or it takes a long time for the energy to actually come to the surface and radiate out in form of energy. But that's an event. And we also have like artifacts, like we have galaxies. In a galaxy there's solar systems, and in the solar system there's the sun and satellites, and even some of the satellites have satellites. The moon is our satellite, and the Earth is the sun's satellite, and they're circling around. And we have asteroid belts and comets who use different kinds of, but they all use the laws of physics to create an event, but they also need energy. And there's a conversation now, is gravity a type of energy, or is it something else? I won't go into that now, but we can all observe things moving thanks to solar energy and thanks to gravity. And that was the case for billions of years, that before we came around. But everything, to make sense for it for us, we call these events. Like the universe doesn't use words, but we have a word that I call event. So when something happens, when the Earth rotates around the sun in a year, or the other planets in less or way more than a year, that's an event. When a solar flare happens, that's an event. When a comet rounds the sun, that's an event. And that was the case. But there was patterns. We now understand that there's planets around almost all stars, perhaps all of them. And they probably have comets and asteroids and there's moons around the planets as well. We can see that there's patterns everywhere, perhaps all over the universe. And they gave rise to a system of patterns of events that we can observe and learn from. And that's thanks. But they're also learning. And learning is two things. For an individual artifact, when the first time someone does something, it learns to do it. But they're also like large scale learning. So if you take humans, the first time some of you learn to walk, but many people walked before you, so it was not new to society, it was new to you. But in some rare cases, someone does something for the very first time. No one has done it before, like flying with an airplane, or inventing an iPhone, or making the first word, or the first dance move. Before humans, there were no dance, but someone somewhere did the first dance move, and it was an iterative process. Well, like there wasn't John Travolta or Michael Jackson on the first day, because it was a very long process of learning to dance. But someone somewhere did the first dance move, and that's what we call learning. So it's learning for each individual. Everyone has to learn to speak and dance when they're young and things like that. But they're also like the novel type of learning, when someone does something for the first time. And we also know now that sometimes during science, we know that people apart from each other, discover the same thing. There's many examples in science. I forget the name, but when someone discovers something at the same time, and we know that have had no contact with each other. It just emerges at the same time. So it's a, maybe, I don't know if Per knows the name, but it's the name of that phenomenon, when something happens at the same time. There's new learning. No one has known it before, but suddenly several people learn it at the same time without talking to each other. That's really fascinating. So we've been using our Glasby game dialogue exercise around this. What is learning? Is there a learning field where you can access things like this? How does this happen? Is it a quantum effect? Or we joke about it. There's a learning field. So if you plug into the learning field, you can learn things. And all events, that's one of my new takes. So all events need values for it to transform, consume, and destroy, and create new values. So energy and matter are different types of values. For a solar system to form, it needs the matter from a previous supernova, the value of that, and I also need the energy stored inside the biochemical energy stored inside atoms to make nuclear fusion. And that's a value. And it creates solar light is a value for us. Without solar light or solar radiation, no life on Earth. We've been stone cold, and we learn to harness this radiation and turn it into biochemical energy here on the planet as well. So this is where I add the complexity to this model. So before there was life, but then we add what we call living agents, and I will jump straight to multicellular life because this is a short talk. And we learned through agency to do events that the universe couldn't dream of before. We can make things that doesn't make sense. We can walk up a hill. Nothing walks up a hill. It falls down a hill. As a boulder before, it was stuck in a mountain, and then it came loose and it fall down the gravity well down the mountain. But we can walk up in a mountain. That doesn't make sense. But we use this through all kinds of complex muscle processes, and we use a nervous system to give us the goal that I should go up the mountain. I have a goal to go up there, and I actually a very complex process of me walking. It's way more complex, the process of actually get the living animal to walk up a mountain than we think. We think of it's just one front leg over the front. But if you know what's going on in each individual cell, in the nervous system and the brain, to get the animal to walk up a hill, it's very complex in itself. But for us to navigate this, we don't think about what's going on in billions of cells in our body. We think about the one process, walking up a hill. It's an event. Walking to work, waking up, taking a shower, it's an event. But it's a multitude of events. And a year in our life is an event. And my whole life is one event, including millions of small events. But that's how we group things, and that's how I want you to think about reality. That it's a lot of events, and that's why you usually can derive from them using causality. One event triggers the next, and the next, and the next. But we can't predict it, and we use all kinds of complex inside narratives, I will call them, to trigger events. We can call them instructions. We can call them goals. So my DNA and my cells and my nervous systems and my brain and my teaching from my parents and my teaching and my boss at work, they all come together to give me an instruction. What do I do during a day? Why are you here today taking notes? It's not just one trigger. It's thousands of triggers that come together to form your behavioral patterns. And all these triggers and instructions, I group under the name narratives. I haven't seen anyone else done it, and I thought a lot of different words. I could make up a word, but I chose an already existing word that's diffuse enough to encapsulate all things that give rise to your daily behavior. This is I've thought a lot about this. You're free to ask me questions if you're not following along.
So it has also a lot to do with your ego, because so you build different narratives depending on where
it's easy if you think like I have a crab here. A crab doesn't have my consciousness, but or like a single cell amoeba or earthworm. We talked about earthworms. They don't have a complex brain that gives rise to their destruction. They just act according to a nervous system that is programmed from birth from their DNA. So all of their instructions come in their DNA. And some animals has been the same for hundreds of millions of years. They do the same thing every day for hundreds of millions of years, like the horseshoe crab and stuff like that. They're still around. They do the same thing they did 100 million years ago. The same DNA gives rise to the same behavior, but sometimes the environment triggers it differently. But basically, they do the same thing every day for 100 million years. So it's a narrative in them. But we, of course, we can adapt really rapidly. You seldom do the same thing every day that you did today, but there's still many patterns in your daily life. You can see that for the last year, I brush my teeth every day. That's a pattern. You do it every day. For what reason? Is it in your DNA? Was you born with? No. There was something else instructing you to brush your teeth, and then it becomes a behavioral pattern. So once you've learned it, you aren't born with it, but you still do it every day because you have learned it.
Yes, Michael, that's a really interesting concept actually. And you said a sentence at the last before Sandeep had a question. I didn't have time to write that sentence down. I think that would be a great summary of the concept. What was it, the sentence you said? I didn't remember it.
No, what was it? Give me the
God.
context.
It was, I lost myself. It was such a good two sentence that you just connected. I can't remember what it was.
We have it on
on the movie.
I'm filming it, so you can watch it later, because my brain is all over the place in this. So
if you could proceed from that,
yeah,
we can rewatch the video.
yeah. So that's what I'm getting to use. But simple animals have simple instructions. The more complex the animal, the more complex the instruction. And we become social animals. You can see herds of animals, schools of fish, birds flying together in the sky, doing things together that none of the individual animal can do on their own. And we gave rise to ant and termites and bee colonies that has been around for a long time doing social thing. But all bees do the same thing over and over again, and every beehive does almost the same thing all over the earth, even if it's different environment and habitats and things like that. So they're born with the instructions. You don't have to teach bees things, because it's inside their DNA mostly, all the behavior.
Yes. Did we have some activities to do? Exercise?
Today?
Yes.
Yeah, we're going to do an exercise later called Plastic Games.
Time, I thought we should proceed with the exercise part.
So that's what I'm trying to. So there's a lot of narratives, and I will giving rise to living agents, our behavior. So for anything to happen in society, there's a narrative, or thousands and millions of narratives behind it. And when you hear things on the news, people try to explain the behavior of a single person. They try to nail it down to one thing, but actually it's thousands of things, all connected together. And that's what we need to understand. So for anything to happen, it's thousands of different, what I call narratives, that interplay together to give rise to a behavior. But sometimes something happens that haven't happened before. I like to use the school shooting. Before anyone, it's a tragic example, but it's a perfect example. Before anyone did it, it was the first time in Columbine, there was a school shooting. And nobody knew of this, nobody did it. But there was so many people retelling what had happened, and they made movies and news documentaries about it, and suddenly it was a narrative that everyone can copy. You didn't have to invent the idea yourself. You can just read or watch a movie or hear about it, and then your brain figured out that this is an event that can happen, and if it can happen, someone can copy it and do it again. So it's a tragic example of we think we're spreading the news about an event because it's so horrifying, but at the same time we learn a lot of other people how to actually do it, and then it started popping up everywhere after that, and now we have so many school shootings tragically. But if nobody knew about it, it would be very hard to invent it yourself. If there is a learning field, of course.
But then it has a lot of things to do with how the act was enabled. Right.
Yeah.
It's not just because that information about a school shooting enabled another shooting.
Yeah.
It's also like it has a lot to do with how maybe like different businesses
Yeah.
made guns available.
Yeah,
so
of course.
easily.
It's all connected. It's not a single
right.
event. For that to happen, a lot of other narratives had to come into play together for that to happen for the first time at all.
Mm-hmm.
But there's other good example. The first moon landing, or take a favorite sport of yours.
Basketball.
Yeah. So has there been any records in basketball? I don't follow that, but someone does something that had been never done before.
Yeah, but
100 points in a
Yeah.
game.
Yeah.
but
And once that was possible, did someone replicate it?
Never.
Never. But there's other example of this. The English person who first ran the 4-minute mile. They said it was impossible, and as soon as one person did it, several persons did it in the same year. So how did that happen? And things like that. And there's also there's a really fascinating book about this called Stealing Fire. I recommend everyone to read it. It's about extreme sports, because the tricks we do today in if you parkour, BMX, mountain biking, skateboard, and things like that, the tricks we do today, all of them were impossible 20 years ago, and it's hundreds of tricks that was impossible. How is that? What is that learning process behind that? It's really fascinating. It's just not the narrative. There's something else there. There's so much exploration in the level of skill you need to do a trick today that was impossible 20 years ago. It's hard to think that it's explainable for simple learning.
Wait,
But
stealing
it's
fire.
also
Yeah.
stealing fire.
Stealing
by
Fire,
Stephen Cotton.
Stephen Kotler and Jamie Wheel.
Perfect.
So there is also the concept of collective learning, right?
Yeah.
Like, so if one tribe it a certain region of the world
Yeah.
learns to do something, it other tribe who is not in contact with that tribe also learns to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Like because for example, like when people didn't know that, there were many people all around the world in different parts of the world, like thousands of years ago, we could read the stars.
Yeah.
Same
The celestial
as-
navigators. And
Yeah, like we could navigate the same way as the people we have never met do it, and it was exactly the same way how we did it.
Yeah.
So
I put together a small list that has many more of the different types of narratives that I group into this category that give rise to human behavior. We take it, of course, we can discuss this on a mammal or a plant level as well. But for this talk to be interesting, I talk about it on human level. But this is a sum of the things that gives rise to human behavior. So you understand that all these are connected as well. It's not a single one of them that makes you do something during a day.
So it's all of it.
It's all of it connected. So you have to understand the complexity of this to even start navigating it. And that's what I'm very interested in. How do we understand what gives rise to a good event or a bad event? Because we know good events and we can see bad events. The news are filled with bad events and we replicate them all the time. How do we get less of the bad and more of the good events?
So can you if someone can all of it, that person can skip the bad events?
Yeah, we can start. The first thing is to start talking about it. How do we get more good events and how do we get less bad events? And what is the driving forces and mechanisms that gives rise to good or bad events?
Can I take a picture?
I can send this both as a text file and PDF.
I was
if you
trying
want.
to find, I was trying to find.
Well,
if
take
it
a
was
picture
wrong.
as well if you
I'm
want.
trying to find
No,
it.
if you can
Something,
send it, it's okay.
Connect. But everything is connected.
So this gives
Stories,
and now that we have
music.
created a lot of we ourselves from the beginning, all artifacts were made by the universe, but then we give rise to we started using wood and metal to make our own artifacts. That's been new things. We learned to make new things, and now we have made such complex artifacts as this that has its own behavior. This can act on its own. It can give you messages and things like that. And now we're going into the AR world where we don't even need human triggerers anymore. They can trigger themselves. And that's a whole complex weave of what we call artifact narratives. What programming language and electronics is of course part of it, and that's fascinating in itself. How do you many people in this field, I talk a lot about people in the tech, they treat this as a separate thing, so they don't think that this is a narrative in itself. And we also always sometimes many times use the analogies of computer and programming where we refer to human behavior, but it's not the same. We're not programmed, our brain is not a computer, it's an organ. It's very different, but we try to think of that AI will give rise to consciousness because we can think a computer is the same thing as a living organ, but it's not. They're very different, and that's why AI is so scary, because we don't understand how AI works, because it's not like us. I don't have much time, so I can talk to this for hours, but all this gives rise to what we call networks, because every single individual can learn something, but then when we come to what we call hyper agents or things like that, we have what we call the agent arena relationship, and we can group agents into vessels. So your body is a vessel for billions of cells. I think it's 30 million, 13 million. How many cells in the human body?
1 trillion.
Yeah. So and there are also a lot of bacteria in your body. It's not 10 times, but I think it's
trillions.
Double the amount of organism in your body is not don't have your DNA or something. I don't know exact number. I should know this. But so your body is a vessel of many small agents, and society is a vessel for many. So society is a vessel of many humans, agents, and things like that. So there's John Verveek is one of the guy who explored the agent arena relationship. But even he doesn't talk about the vessel concept, that we group things in vessels, and that's what we call he called them hyper agents, but it's more complex than that, I think. And an arena is a place where an event takes place. So that's what I added to many of these people's thinking. They don't talk about the event itself. So for something to happen, it does usually have a physical place, and that's what we call an arena for an event to happen. And this becomes useful because now I'm going to go into the core model of what we call place innovation, where actual events that make sense to us as people in this room. We don't think about what's happening in cells, we don't think about what's happening in Euroscale, but we think about what happens in our daily lives, and that's how do we use this thinking in our daily lives. So what to take away from that? Most of us do what we did yesterday. We make the same events, and maybe a little bit different. I brush my teeth every day, but sometimes I'm not home, so I do it in a different bathroom, or sometimes I do it in the kitchen. But I mostly do what I did yesterday. And when you think about all your behavioral patterns, that's a good thing. Our body's extremely good at doing behavioral patterns, because else we had to consciously think about everything we're doing, and we can't do that. So behavioral patterns is a very useful invention of the living organisms. But at the same time, they give rise to habits that we don't think about and don't change. And we have a lot of habits today that's not good for us or not good for the planet. And we have to think about what type of behavioral patterns and habits can we change and become aware of it. And a lot of us do what other people do around us. We are good at mimicry. We wear the same clothes. We talk like them. We walk like them and stuff like that. It's norms, conformity, culture. There's a lot of different narratives that makes us socially conformative. And then we have all kinds of tribal and societal and national and global leadership that also gives us top-down directions, what to do and not to do. So many of the nations are maybe homogenized, the same, the earth. Many have copied the Western colonial model, But there are examples like North Korea that's totally separated their internal narrative around behavior from the rest of the world by cutting it off. But still it seeps in.
Is it good or bad?
We don't know, but it's the end result. As for a very long time we didn't have effect on the biosphere, but now we have the power to end the biosphere, like poison it for all higher life, and we don't want that, or do we? I for one don't want that, and that's a stand you have to take. So what is an economy? So economy is not money. It exists for Earth purposes. There's two things in an economy. There's the biosphere. It's the thin layer. It's not the planet. Most of the planet is molten iron or molten stone, and we can't live there. And even in the atmosphere, we can't live most places in the atmosphere. High in the atmosphere is impossible. So we live in the bottom. And a big part of the surface as well is underwater by high pressure. We can't live there either. So we live in a very thin layer on this. The biosphere itself is thin, but we live in an even smaller area of that biosphere. So that's our playground. That's where we live and play. And from that, and for anything to happen on Earth, it needs energy. Most of the energy comes from all energy comes from suns. There are three types of energy. Direct solar energy, that's what we for a long time, plants capture the solar energy, and some bacteria are captured by chemical energy. And today we can capture it directly using water, wind, and solar technology to capture direct sunlight. But most of the energy we come from what we call food, and say, that is other organisms. We eat each other, and we do all things except plants and some bacteria eat other organisms. And we have a very today I won't go into this, but we have an extremely large meat production industry today, where we eat eat mammals and fish and stuff like that, and we don't think about that, but we need to eat anything. We need to eat living organisms at least. We can't live on direct solar energy. And then we have what we call old fossil solar energy. It's mostly bacteria that was formed 600 million years ago or something like that. That we know that took 200 million years to form, and we burn it up in a couple of hundred years, and then it's gone. It's never coming back, and we use it up like it's no thought at all. And then we will call ancient solar energy. It's atom energy, like nuclear fission and stuff like that. Things that formed not from our sun, but in another supernova a long time ago. But it is still formed inside the sun when it exploded. So it's still solar energy, but it's ancient. It's not from our sun. It's from another sun. So that's the type of energy we have.
Michael, it's been 1 hour.
We already done.
It's good.
Yeah. Can I have 20 more minutes? Yeah. So, and apart from that, we have what I call narrative capital, because all human behavior on the planet is what we call narrative behavior, narrative capital. And this we can explode into all these types of what we call different kinds of capital, where financial capital, we call money. We pretend that everything that happens in society is because of money, but in reality it's just a type of mindset we have. All other things happens because of other reasons. So this is the framework to understand all resources we have to play with. So if you become an entrepreneur or change maker, you have to understand all these types of capitals to play with and how they interact together. Still, you hear people just thinking they can buy everything for money, but it turns out you need competence. That's called human capital. We need actual people having a skill to do the things we want them to do, and they need time and focus, what you call attention capital. That's become very prevalent now, that it turns out many people are stuck on their attention on social media. And there was Tristan Harris did a movie about this, and everyone was horrified that they have captured our attention. But in essence, all living beings have attention all the time and focus. that we canalize into our human, our skills and competence and bodies. And then we have social capital. That's the connection. That's the thing Bertola and me are very interested in. How do you build communities, nations, cities? How do you play society together? The connection between humans. How do we navigate those? And that comes into what we call entangled capital, governing. The thing that the village elder did in the grandmother and the grandfather in a hunter-gatherer tribe. They governed the tribe mostly. But today we have all kinds of governance models, from democracy to autocracy, to govern. And they use all kinds of narratives called political power, hidden powers, violence capital. We don't talk about that, but violence capital have been around for a very long time. Hundreds of thousands of years use violence to take things from other people, or the threat of violence. And we have what we call the coordination capital that we have outsourced to the market here in the West. So you think you can buy everything, but in essence, there's a lot of resources in society. How do we distribute them evenly so that everyone gets a share of the pie? Yeah, some say you have to work and you can just go buy whatever you want from other people. And some people, like communists, says it's the other way around. Someone top down coordinates it, but none of this is true. There's a lot of coordination going on that doesn't use money or communism or capitalism, but we don't think about that. So we have to think how do we make sure that everyone has food and shelter and toothpaste, the things we really need, and how do we distribute all the things that we don't really need but we have, like all the luxuries the super rich have that we all want from them as well. How do we distribute that? And that's part of that is structural capital. That comes from mineral capital. Mineral capital is everything that consists of atoms and molecules, and that has given rise to what we call the biocapital. We say organic molecules. And organic molecules builds life mostly, and most animals eat other biological capital to grow their bodies. And then we have plants who grow their own biological capital using water and sun and harbor and coal dioxide, carbon dioxide. So this is, and then I have a special category for scientific capital, because the scientific invention made us understand all of this. So there's a lot of science in the world, and there's over 2 million science reports every year that's produced right now, I think, and no one has read them all. And that's maybe what we can use AI for, to read all the science we have, because to know what's going on. What have we discovered together, collectively? And now we come to our model of this. How do we, as humans, navigate all this I've just talked about? And we have come up with 4 categories of behaviors and events to do. If you're interested in this, I can give a lot of talks online on this, because we can. That's the model me and Carl and Bertola made in the beginning, and no one understood anything because we didn't give all the background I gave you now. So I think the most important thing today was to give you the background, because then we can explore this together if you want to know more about this. So that's why I spent so much time on the background instead. But in essence, since everything is an event, you have to understand that when you think of events, we usually think about conferences and festivals and music and parties and things like that. And dinner is an event, but everything that takes place during a day and during a larger event, there's a lot of smaller events. Your whole life is an event. Me lifting my hand is an event, and everything in between. And to navigate that, to understand that if you want to navigate the society, you have to see that all the events are connected. And most of the events are boring or bad today. How do we make better events? How do we make every single event matter more? Create more value, create more meaning and stuff like that together. And that's what...
This connects a lot to what the other Michael says. Michael Engström with the Tillit to Trust because he talks about that every day is thousands of decisions,
Yeah.
and either you can let them just happen, or you can actually take the decisions.
Or you, at least you can try to make sense of them,
Yeah.
to navigate them, because you can't infect every decision, but you can become self-aware.
Yeah.
And for that process to happen, I use something called self-narration. I tell myself what I do. Now I'm going into the kitchen. Now I'm going to meet my friends and talk to myself about this, to make myself aware about the events I'm going to do. And together that gives rise to thinking, a mindset that we call journification, that understanding that for every person, their life is a journey. And for every community, organization, and nation, that's a journey. That's a collective journey of many agents. But we don't talk about this. What gives the things I've talked about in my last speech? What gave rise to me becoming Captain Future? I didn't find the right people for 40 years because there was no facilitation of my journey. There was no giving me the right, pointing me in the right direction to meet the people I need to meet. I had to just bump into them by chance or by looking very hard for a very long time and finally finding them myself. So that's how we have facilitate what we call journification, and that's true for a person. It's true for a place. This locale has a journey with different people interacting with it. You're part of this journey of this locale today, but you're not here around the clock. So you're not. Your journey goes elsewhere. And other things happen. Different events happens in this when you're not here. These four fields are connected, of course. There's a lot of event on your journey, and a lot of journey gives rise to event. And then we have this is what Bartola is interesting, called weaving unification. How do you build? How do you connect all the agents and all the paths together? How do you connect people's lives together? We organize them today with either private companies or public institutions and organizations. So you either work for a private institution or a public institution, but that's a part of how do you coordinate value creation within an organization or a society, and how do you connect the right people and their ideas, passions, places, stakeholders and clusters together, and how do you learn? How do you navigate that? And then we have the last part that we usually refer to money. How do you buy something now? How do you enable something to happen? It turns out we can't buy anything. We can't buy a sustainable tomorrow. We can just order it up. Hey, I want to pay $400 billion for a sustainable tomorrow. Where do I put the order? Where's the order button on Amazon for that? There's no order button because we can't buy. We have to enable for it, and it's a extremely complex process, and there's a lot of, if you go back till there's a lot of power capital and political capital that gives rise to the wrong enablification. They enable for all the wrong events all the time. They keep the old behavioral patterns in place. So we have to understand, how do you enable for new types of behavior? And that's what a lot of people in sustainable entrepreneurship and stuff like that do. They try out new products, new things to do. Yeah. So that's our model. You want to know more about that?
Is this the last one?
I have lots more. Can go into depth in this if you're interested. I also can talk about the philosophy about navigating. I've explored this. This doesn't make sense for you, I think, because you have to have a lot of interest in that. I also have if you're interested in place innovation, place making, I have a lot of talk about that. So if you work with place making for a place, how do you organize all the four groups of activities for a place to evolve?
Yeah.
Actually,
We would love to hear more about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you can share something from that, because as part of our summer work, we
Yeah.
are thinking about placemaking in Tinnered.
Yeah. So what you basically need to do is you have to think about what types of events organized with these four fields, you can call them: identification, unification, weaving, and enablification. So for a place to evolve, how do you enable that? How do you weave the right resources together? how do you see each individual agent or a collective of people living in a place? How do you see their paths? How do you start talking about it? What's your life path? Where do you see yourself in 20 years? Do you still live here, or do you live somewhere else? And right now, this year, what do you want to happen this summer or this fall in this place? And how do we enable for that? Who needs to meet who for that to happen, and things like that. And I've been to there's an event called Placemaking Week Europe and other stuff. I've been to them online and I've been to them in person, and they talk about the grey stuff up there: classic place branding, narrative, content, structure, material channels. They don't have the multi-complex model me and Bartola and Carl have trying to advocate for. How do you make PlayStation? I've been talking to they have in my hometown Halmstad, I have a placemaking project, and the people working there, they're clueless. They have no idea. The city center in Halmstad is dying, and they use so simple narratives about okay, maybe we should create a food festival, and so they have no idea how it all connects together and why. So they're clueless, and I've offered my help, but they don't understand even that they need help.
And what is something that they can do to not be clueless and innovate?
To understand what I've been telling you here, like not the 1 hour version, but the 1 year version of this. I would love to give I've been talking now, maybe through some way find a way to give courses in this. But I can't teach you. I'm just giving you the brief overview. I don't expect you to understand all of it in 1 hour here, but I want to give you a taste to it. If you're interested in this stuff, I would love to explore it further with people. So it takes a large amount of curiosity to explore something. If you're not curious and excited, you won't learn or explore. We need to learn, we need to explore, we need to play with things to truly understand it. We have to make mistakes
So
together to experiment.
Yeah. The whole process is in long term. It cannot happen instantly short term. And short term, maybe the experiments are short term.
So there's a myth that change takes a long time, but it can also take quick time. COVID was a perfect example. Suddenly we could change the whole of society, not in Sweden, but many other countries. There was gave rise to behavioral patterns no one had done before, staying home from school, never done before in large scale, but was doable in a couple of weeks.
Yeah,
but Finkel, this will take 50 years, no? Which was done in 3 weeks. So it is possible with the right incentive and the right enableification. But we don't need catastrophes and pandemics and earthquakes and volcanoes and stuff. When an earthquake happens, everyone doesn't do what they did yesterday. Almost everyone in the catastrophe area stopped doing what they did yesterday. But if there's no earthquake, we all do what we did yesterday. That's the conundrum. How do we change that through a mindset of eventification? How do we give rise to new better behavior, new patterns without actually having an earthquake to trigger it or a pandemic?
Unless you're used to earthquakes.
What?
And live in
Yeah.
I said unless you're used to earthquakes.
Yeah, but if your home is destroyed, you won't sleeping and brush your teeth there anymore because the home is gone.
Yeah, of course.
And that gives next day maybe you live in a shelter, but that's a tragic way of exchanging your life. Can we change lives without having tragic events to trigger them?
Yeah, but now it's like you're talking to us, and we are just suggesting some solutions. But we're doing things for people who live here.
Yeah. So how can you make changes here without in people's daily lives?
Yes.
How do you trigger it? Is it
Yes.
what's the starting point, and what's the trajectory? What's the map? What's the path for that to transpire? Is it the one-off they go to a festival and they try something and then they go home and did what they did the day before that, or how do you take that path so it continues? That's what we call journification. How do you make your life change your life path for a single trigger, but it doesn't go back to your old habits?
Okay.
things like that. How do you? Well, do you need a community? Do you need a strong leader? Do you need the right? How do you trigger human behavior? There's a lot of behavioral science. This, do you carrot or stick? Do you use internal narratives? Can you use a YouTube, a viral YouTube or TikTok video to change behavior? Is it a Netflix series? Is it a conversation? What is it that changes us? And how do we start playing with it? Because we don't know. If we know, we would do it, but we have to start playing with this. And you can do that for like events, projects, and stuff like that, and entrepreneurship. But you can also start learning from people all over the world doing this, because we can't do it alone.
Is there any more questions?
Crystal. For me.
I think you were done, right?
Yeah.
Maybe
I have a
is it-
concept called Future Village, but you're interested in hearing about it? 5 minutes.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So we came up with we had an Vinnova project that's where we had to make a future project together with them, and me and Stellan and some people applied for a concept called Future Village. We didn't get accepted, but I still played with the idea. Because if you think of the farmer society, we all lived in villages. You knew everyone, and everyone knew you, or in the hunter-gatherer tribe before that. And sometimes a few people moved to big cities where they didn't know everyone. But most of humans know everyone in their group, and everyone knew everyone. But today we live in such a spread out world. So maybe I know you a little, but I know none of your other friends or family or work. I know no one else in your life. And you knew, I knew 100, 200 people, and you knew nothing of them. But we are in the same, what we call village. But my village is very different from yours, but still we have a single point of connection. But if we three know each other, we have a triangle of connection. And if you can expand upon that and understand that every human today is connected to people outside the traditional farmer village, or so that everyone doesn't know everyone anymore, and that's extremely confusing for the human brain to understand that we live in what we call a global village. And digital technology through social media, I have many friends I've never met in person. They live in what I call Future Village, but I've never touched them or hugged them, because I only met them through the screen. Especially, I explored so much during Clubhouse and Zoom calls and stuff like that. I have very deep friends that I never touched. But at the same time, I have people I've touched that I hardly have any interesting conversation with as well. And how do you navigate your village? Because many people today are lonely because they don't entertain your social relationship with the people in your network, your friends. Friendship is a skill, I would say. You're not just friends. You have to entertain friendship. You have to do something for someone else or ask for things. The typical thing is, to be a good friend you have to do things. But many people I have found out now for my own hardship, when I had needed help from a depression, something, I could just ask for help. People want to help me without me giving them anything. There's also a type of friendship. You can actually ask for things, and we don't do that either. Not in a good way. And here in Sweden, we have institutionalized so much of what came from the farmer village or the hunter tribe before. So it's not the social connection for you. There's an institution giving you what you need, or doing for you what the family or the tribe or the village did before. And we have to navigate that mindset. Who is in my village, and how do I entertain the relationship with my friends? And there's a lot of people that I have loose connection with, but how do I keep in contact with them so they know about me and I know about them without us being close friends?
I found it very scary with phones. I can talk to someone from Australia, their voice, it comes out of a phone. It copy what they say out of this.
Yeah.
How did the voice come? No.
So that's what we have to get good at, to take care of our own village. That's the way. How do we take care of a planet? We actually don't, but we take care of our village, and our village takes care of the planet. If we live in a global village, we're one global village, and together we can do it. What we call an hyper agent. How do we coordinate that? By taking care of our village is one of my theses. Is that how do you take care of the people you know? How do you offer help? If someone asks for help or asks for something, how do you give it? Or how do you, if people are afraid to ask, how do you find them and give them what they need without them asking it and things like that? And that's what Bartola has explored very much. He has an extremely large social network that he has entertained online digitally for many years. He's 17,000 people in an Excel list, the people he keep in contact with. It's like mind-blowing. I couldn't do that much. So he's been a lot of action research in how do you build social capital and things like that. And most of us shouldn't have that many, but we are so lonely, and we have fewer close friends now than we had 40 years ago.
He actually usually comes around to the summer space, but I don't know if he will manage this year.
So how do we entertain our connections to other people? In context of all the other things I said before, it's very. I don't have the answers. I just have all my thinking about it. That's why I'm so excited about this. Does any of what I said make sense?
Yes. But you finished with this one?
Yeah.
Okay.
You said how do you entertain friendships?
Yeah.
Connections.
Connections. I would say the first step is sharing or being vulnerable.
Yeah. There are different ways to do it.
Yeah, but for me personally, I feel like sharing and being vulnerable is like the first step. You can't without sharing or without being vulnerable. It'd be like a restriction on friendship at the start.
Many people have been doing this unaware. I've been trying doing aware of that when I call a friend, or when I play with them online, or when I go to dinner with someone. I'm now becoming self-aware that I'm taking care of my village when I do this. Ask questions, being interested, and me having autism, this is like doesn't come naturally for me either, because I have some social skills that I'm not born with as an autist. So I become like self-aware about this as well in a very funny way. So.
If nobody has questions. Yep. So
You can-
what's next?
Yes.
Are we still